Hello everyone. Today is World Entrepreneurs Day, and on this special occasion, we are hosting a webinar with some first-gen entrepreneurs. And this is to understand what should agencies do to achieve a profitable growth. So this webinar is being hosted with support from Zebra, which is a business financial suite for agencies. And here is a warm note of thanks to them. So let's quickly start with the panel, and let me quickly introduce the panelists first of all, who are all first-gen entrepreneurs. And they all are profitable now, and there must be some things which they must have done right, which is what we are going to understand today. Introducing them in no particular order. First of all, is Pranav Kumar, who is MD India of Allison Partners, which is a global communications agency. Welcome, Pranav.
Thank you, Rahul. Very nice to be here this afternoon.
Next, we have PK Anil, who has recently joined Windshine's social media agency as partner. Welcome, Anil.
Hi, welcome. Thank you.
Third in line, we have Ashutosh Harbola, who is the founder of Bazooka, which is an influencer marketing agency. So welcome, Ashutosh.
Thank you, Rahul. Thank you. Pleasure to be here.
We also have Pratik Gupta today with us. Pratik is the founding partner of Foxymoron, which is an independent digital agency. Welcome, Pratik.
Hi. Thanks, Rahul.
Next, I want to introduce Advait, who is the founder of Alive Now, a digital and creative tech agency. Welcome, Advait.
Hey, good to be here. Thanks, Rahul.
Welcoming Vimal Kutmutia, who is the founder of 17/7, which is a UX and UI design agency. Hi, Vimal.
Hey, Rahul. Thanks for having me here.
And welcoming Suman Roy. He's the CEO of August Communications, which is a creative agency. Hi, Suman.
Hi, Rahul.
Quickly, let's start with the discussion and just spend some time understanding profitability. And in business, this is one thing which is not subjective, but still means absolutely different to different types of businesses. So please help us understand what are those few things which entrepreneurs should never do in the formative years of their business, which might affect profitability of their business in the long run.
So I think that, personally for us, initially it was, when we started out, this entrepreneurship wave was not a big thing, right? And very quickly we started to get a lot of offers to take a lot of money and, dilute a lot of equity. And during the same time, the whole concept of profitability was up in the air, right? Because a lot of these companies and a lot of the internet startups and a lot of the e-commerce companies were going after, lifetime value of a customer. So, people were getting used to profitability not being at the heart of what you do. And I think for us, profitability, I think we were profitable in the first 6-7 months of operation, primarily being a services operation. If you bootstrap it correctly, you can be in the green fairly quickly and then decide to do what you want to do with the money that actually starts to come in. It's a harder journey, but the one thing that you should never do in this quest for profitability is get money too soon. Because I think that if you get money too soon, you find ways of spending it that actually don't exist. And I think also the learning curve shortens massively because you tend to give out a lot of work about things that you should be doing, for yourself. So for us, profitability has been a very sacrosanct way of running a business. And it's been the harder path, but it's been the most correct path. And and we've taken all that money and invested it back into the business. But profitability has been at the core of how we actually operate.
Yeah, Anil, can businesses be still profitable if they do not decentralize basic functions like finance, sales, or operations?
The thing is, I feel while decentralizing eases the burden on the top management, functions like finance, sales, and operations, they need more expertise and experience. So some decisions making power should be left with the top management because, and I think it'll only help the business make profit. Yeah.
So, Advait, what if the resources are just not enough to say hire a finance head?
We've been lucky enough. I think it's our 44th straight quarter of operating profitably. I echo Pratik's thoughts over here actually. So a couple of points, right? One thing is if you're running a service business, from our first quarter itself, we were profitable, although very early on, the profit amount was very less. We were profitable. And if you run the business in a smart way, And if you, control your costs well, and if you invest to get, new business, grow not exponentially and not grow like in a crazy way, but grow in a mature and a staggered way, there's a very, very good chance that you will be profitable and you will stay profitable. Now, specific to your question, Rahul, this is my personal opinion, but other entrepreneurs might have a different thought to it. Finance is one function I think should actually be overlooked by the CEO himself. You can have a finance head, but then I think the owners and the promoters, if they don't have a pulse of the business in terms of the inflows, outflows, and the status of the just the financial situation of the company, and if that is something the owner slash entrepreneur ends up delegating a lot, it could actually come back to bite them in the back. And I think finance is one function that actually owner slash entrepreneurs have to be actively involved with. There's portions of that you can delegate, but then at a macro level, I think it's important that they need to have a kind of a tight grip on. There are other functions like your operations and HR that you can give a little bit more leniency in terms of when you delegate. But finance, if you ask me, should more control with the owner entrepreneur, and of course where the finance team also takes care of some of the day-to-day activities.
Point taken, Advait. Moving on to Vimal quickly. Given an opportunity, would you prefer having a big business which will start giving returns, I don't know, maybe 2, 3 or 4 years down the line, or would you prefer a small business with a lean team which is profitable from day one? Basically, what I'm trying to do here is trying to establish the circumstantial leniency we give to ourselves when it comes to profitability.
Sure, Rahul. I mean, if you ask me, we have been running a small business with a lean team since past 7 years, and what I have witnessed is, we have been profitable right from day one, though the profit margins were very less. But the idea of doing a business, what we have understood is you need just one good idea about adding values to your customers or adding values to the people out there, and business gets built up over there. Hence, when you're running your own business without any funding from outside, you get more control over the business. You get the access where you can maneuver the course of your business wherever you want with the lean team, which is not really possible when you grow very big, right? So I would always prefer to go with a lean team approach when it comes for a business, when it comes to running a business.
Sure. Pranav, what is the secret of PR agencies being very cash rich, and what are you guys doing right?
Well, I think if you look at the business model of public relations firms, inherently, it is your classical consulting model where the fundamental drivers of the business are essentially top line revenue and obviously giving consulting communications services to clients. So in many, when we compare to other agencies such as advertising or digital, etc., at times we don't have a lot of costs around creativity or production or other elements like that. So from a pure play public relations perspective, your accounts can be fairly high yielding and high margin. So that's pretty much, I think, the success of what defines public relations. Obviously, as you evolve in your services, other costs come in terms of campaign development and things like that. But classically, from a PR perspective, that's pretty much how it works. And I think what we are doing right is a couple of things. One is that obviously, which you talked about earlier, keeping a very strong focus on our margins and what parameters we want to operate in to make sure that we have profitability, right from day one. Second is, one can't always choose, but the idea is to make sure that you choose to work with the right kind of clients, which offer enough opportunity, in terms of revenue, and allow you to also bring a lot of value and additionally offer, upsell more services. So I think having the right kind of client mix is very important. and really focusing on those high yielding, high yield clients is good. Many a times, you have a lot of opportunities to go out and get new business, but you also have to, as an agency, ask yourself, is this business right for me? Am I, the best suited for this client? And essentially keeping, having a very conscious sense of, what kind of business do you want to go after? What kind of clients you want to work with, and making sure that you pick those very carefully, so that your business grows and thrives, and people love to work on those clients also. So I think it's a function of many things, and that's what really makes working from a public relations standpoint fairly lucrative in some sense.
Suman, has COVID affected your business? I mean, has the numbers gone down? What about collections? What about resource management? How is it with you guys?
Yeah. So, hi guys, once again. Yes, definitely the first month of lockdown, it took a severe hit on the business. But fortunately, with smart planning and with existing clients and some new connections, we actually currently doing great in this lockdown part two. So I think what actually worked for us is like all other guys, we are also working from home till now, and we I think efficiently planned the business pitch strategy, and we got some new clients which are yet to be announced actually. And the main reason behind the same was that even in this lockdown, we were in a position that we could deliver some smart work and at a reasonable time frame, and that actually helped us. And but yes, market is weak, but I think with smart tactics one can manage this lockdown. And definitely the first short term objective should be survival right now, and then one should gear up. For us, I can say that strategizing in a smarter way definitely helped.
Right, Suman. Ashutosh, what do you prefer? A higher profit percentage or a higher profit margin?
See, it's a very subjective thing, to be very honest, Rahul. Right? See, anything if you've got higher profits, right, then probably either you are into a right business or probably you are not doing it right. One way or the other, right? I would like to bell the cat that way typically. But I think, see, when you talk about a profitable business, when you talk about business as a overall ecosystem, right? I think it's a combination of a lot of things together, right? It's just not the idea. A lot of people see what you, I, and everyone sitting on this panel is imagining right now to do a business on or to do a startup on, right? There are 1,000 other people who are planning at the same time. I think at the end of the day, it's about execution, which is very, very important in any kind of business, right? And that execution should bring in, the most important thing is a viable business model that can sustain for the next 10 years, right? And then you have to put that slice of question which you just added right now, that what is more important, right? See, eventually you see the typical agency model, right? A lot of agencies work on a model where volumes are so important. Pratik is right sitting over here, right on the panel, right? So probably a volume with a 15% margin also can bring you a lot of effectiveness, right? And probably a startup like us, right, doing some 7, 8, 10 crores in a year probably and working at a margin of 20-25% could also be at the same level, right? Again, it's about, are you building up a profitable model for the next 5 years, 10 years, which is the most important thing. I think those number juggling and all those number game, right, is gonna play a very important part. Yes, for the founders together, but eventually I have always been of an approach that it should be a sustainable game, at least which you've planned. You've invested a lot of time for each and everyone has done, right? So it should at least kick in for the next 5 to 10 years. If it is not kicking, I think that money and everything will eventually fade out.
Right, Ashutosh. Pratik, I want to come back to you, and I wanted to ask you that often growth is confused with profitable growth. And Amazons and Flipkarts of the world are growing, but I don't think they're profitable yet. How important it is for businesses to reinvent, and pivot to finally be able to be profitable? And what about people associated? There's also time wastage happening. There's also losses that has been incurred. What about all of that?
So I think it's a question that's fairly close to me, right? Like the way that we've structured our business is, and today if you look at the way that we have structured our business, we're about 7 businesses inside our own network. The hard part for us is that each business model has a different profitability matrix, right? Like there are different places which are garnering a separate sort of a margin versus there are different areas which are garnering a separate sort of a margin. For us, to be profitable is a sign of acceptance in the market, right? Like the profitability percentage obviously varies in the curve that you are on as a business, right? Like once you start to mature, the profitability starts to get a lot more consistent. You're able to predict your business models a lot better. But I think profitability at the base allows you to run a very efficient ship. For me, the fact that, like I have seen so many of these e-commerce companies start and then, hire 200 people, 300 people, 400 people. Now, the problem in such a structure is the fact that, your boss, your super boss, and the boss of that person also has joined the organization at the same time that you have joined the organization. So, who knows the organization better than the other person? And therefore, to create a sustainable culture and to create sustainable margins and to have the same people inside your organization who are able to drive the same kind of business results becomes fairly difficult, right? Which is why you have seen so few of these e-commerce companies actually make it, right? Because their structuring needs to be so bloody good. So for us, profitability has always been the benchmark of acceptance of the business, and we start small, right? Like as an organization, for any business that we do, we start small but we expand fast. That's been our mantra, because starting small gives me the ability to figure out the nooks and crannies, figure out whether the like I may want to have a 40% margin, right? But the industry is only giving me, or the market is only giving me a 20% margin. How does that change my total business model? Am I okay to operate at a 10% margin for a bit to gain market share, versus am I happy to operate at a 60% margin? Like Ashutosh said, there is no right or wrong answer, right? You are always legitimately just dabbling and trying to figure out what is the right mix for you. And for us, it's worked because we are able to show proof in the pie, in terms of that there is enough money coming from there, and then management can sit down and make conscious decisions on how fast they want to grow or how sustainably they want to grow. And that's just a call that you take basis the information you have at that point in time. That's how we do it.
I think that's a great answer. I'm then just taking cues from what Prateek said. I wanted to ask you whether profitable or not, what kind of expenses a business should never do away with?
I think the most important expense, as in that we need to look after, is the people are the brain and the backbone of the company. So we have to make sure that their welfare is taken care of, and their comfort, their salaries are looked after properly. And now with work from home thing coming up, I think we need to spend more this one on websites, and if I think things like having a software that helps you reduce your workload and help make profit. I think that is one of the very important things that we should be looking at, like a software that can help into business planning or prioritize your spends. So overall, I think to start with, it is the people whom we have to take care of.
Sure, Anil. And Advait, how much would you prefer automation? Like Anil said, how much would you prefer automation of business functions, or to what extent a business should be dependent on tools?
Look, there's advantages and disadvantages of tools, right? So basically, we've got to look into your business and look at what are some of the things that are repetitive in nature, and stuff that's repetitive in nature that a tool can handle, right? That's okay. But if you think about it, right, all of us, we're in the business of creativity, and it's very difficult, almost impossible to kind of do stuff in the creative field using structure and tools and all that. Very, very difficult. Creativity, it's about disruption. It's about thinking out of the box. It's about doing things that have not been done before. So tools, I think, businesses should use where there are tasks that are repetitive in nature, where tasks where you want to remove the guesswork, and you want a definite answer. So those are the kind of, I would say, places where you can use some business tools. Frankly, as an agency, there are many times you cannot use tools. I mean, because it's the people are your main tools, if you ask me. Yeah.
And Vimal, what would you prefer?
Well, I believe tools today has become an integral part of running any business that you are moving on, and it takes up a lot of your work from you, and it saves a lot of time and money and increases efficiency. For us, for example, there was a time when we used to do the project management on emails, right? And you can understand how how it could be a lot of time wasters, a lot of inefficiencies in delivering the files and communicating with the clients and all. Today we have been using a lot of tools to run our own business, and it has saved a lot of time and money for us and improved the way we do business today. For instance, we use applications like Basecamps to manage our projects. So it's a kind of platform where everybody in the team comes together and work together, which is like way better than what we used to do on the emails, right? Today we used to manage all our accounts on our Excel sheets and all. After that we shifted ourselves using certain tools like Zebra to manage all our accounting and all, and it gives us so much data to understand what's the health and strength of our business, finances and everything. So yeah, of course, I would say wherever possible, we should look after the way we can integrate the tools and control certain parts of the business.
Sure, Vimal. And Pranav, what about you? I've heard of PR tools to disseminate releases, track them and all. Has this helped you save money?
Yeah, I mean, we use a whole host of tools, but basically the way that we look at it is like, the other, in whatever way that we can reduce operational inefficiencies and adopt to newer models of distribution, outreach, tools that allow us to measure campaigns better, for example. So certainly, those tools help us build a fairly scalable business. At the end of the day, communications is mostly about people and outreach, to your influencers, journalists, media. So not many tools can still replace that, because fundamentally it's a people-driven business. But yes, there's a whole layer of tools that we add to make our sort of day-to-day lives a lot easier, and then we can with those tools effectively save on time. And focus on doing some great work. I think the good thing is that even in the communication industry, the self-serving platforms and tools have really evolved, over the past few years. Whether it's a database of influencers or journalists, you don't have to work on Excels anymore and archive those lists. It's all on the cloud. If we have to, distribute press releases, for example, there are many news wire services, that we use. So I think for any modern public relations firm, you really have to have a pretty good strategy on what technology makes the most sense, and without taking the essence of what we do away, really.
Suman, how do you achieve profitable growth when the market has such low volume of business? And Ashutosh, I would like you as well to address the same question right after Suman.
So I must tell you that I read everywhere and I listen to people that there is low volume of business today. But I think this is not the case. Not the case if you talk about a specific entrepreneur. Because if you talk about me or Prateek or anybody else, you have X number of clients. In lockdown, you have X minus 40% of clients in the market. So you can always tap that bigger chunk which is still there. We need to find out who is the guy who will invest now. You see that edutech guys are spending a lot. Pharma, healthcare, FMCG guys, even some automobile guys are doing very well. Mobile and iPad demands in at homes has increased. So there are several categories which are doing good and which has to do good. You just need to pinpoint and strategize towards that. And when you talk about how to remain profitable, then one dimension is lockdown. Apart from that, there are several dimensions to it. How you function. So I must say that it depends upon the executive at the top key. What is their strategy? Whether they want to do good quality stuff, low volume but high priced, or high volume work, what low priced factory mode may. So it depends ki what is there. But I must say few things, that we are living in a very dynamic times where clients are very impatient, consumers are very impatient. So you have to be dynamic. When I say dynamic, what I mean is, we studied that you need to build your forte, and then as per your forte and USP, you provide a service, and then accordingly you get earnings. But what I have done at August, I have experimented and tried to develop new fortes, new dimensions of business. For example, with content consumption going so high, and we started as a creative agency, we started our own content production house, and that helped us in getting new businesses, new clients, and also holding our clients to ourselves only, because normally when clients go to some other new agency, then there are other scopes that opens up. So I think developing new fortes, new capabilities in this tough time, and even in normal times, will keep you ahead in the graph.
These were very tough times, right? And these were tough times for everybody, right? Irrespective of the fact which industry you are from, or which part of the startup ecosystem you were, right? It's not that you were affected and I was not affected. Everybody got affected, right? I think what's important, which came extremely handy for us at Bazooka, was A, we were lean in nature, which is part A. Part B, I think the only thing which I think made us survive during this entire COVID crisis was the kind of brand name which we built up for ourselves, which is one. The other is your customers, right? Your clients, right? I'll call them customers. I don't call them clients, because I don't come from an agency set of where I have retainer clients. I have clients who come so influencer marketing entirely works on clients coming to you every now and then, right? It's no retainer kind of a thing. So the most important thing which worked for us is that the kind of clients which we had, or the retainers or the customers we had over here, they had a very strong level of trust on us, right? And those who came back, they came back only for that brand name and trust of doing something good, right? I can name you. I again say we lost almost 70-75% of our business during COVID, right? But that 25% or 30% business, or that increase of 20% happened because of the brand name, right? And the 25% was still intact. So where the world managed to lose around, say, 70% of their business, we only managed to lose around 50% of our business. Things are coming back, but at the end of the day, I think it's very important, the kind of work which you have done in the market, right? That's going to be very, very important for you. Eventually, you can have n number of reasons saying that we do this right, we do that tool right, we do this thing right. See, eventually, it's your customer who will judge you, and no one else can judge you that, right? Those clients, I am very grateful to my clients. I can't name them on this, but there have been people who've come back during the COVID era, understanding that the kind of work which we do. I think that's more important at the end of the day. Whatever you are doing, your root, your base should be so strong. Eventually, it's the client who's going to make you win. No one else can do that.
Right. So let's move to the last phase of our webinar today. And Pratik, last question to you. Do you think increasing prices to be more profitable makes sense, or developing new product lines and increasing customer base makes more sense to you? What is it?
See, the market is very distributed today. Rahul, it's not a simple statement to just go out there and say that, do you want to increase your prices? You can demand a premium. Yes, you can demand a premium, but like Ashutosh said, you have to have the brand, you have to have the ability to have delivered to these brands for, umpteen number of years. And then you can definitely charge a premium. But brands today have become very, informed about what is the top up that you're giving them for that extra amount of money that you can actually charge, and therefore for us, it's not always been by design. It's also been by the way that when we started, and because we started, we had clients who wanted different kinds of services, is how we diversified. So what was being said by Suman also was the fact that we were able to go and get clients to do more with us, is one of the other ways of looking at it. So in a lot of the ways, the way that we structure is, yes, at the onset we always have a conversation saying that we're bloody expensive, and the reason that we're expensive is because of the kind of talent that is being put in front of you, to retain that talent today, because everybody and anybody, and everybody's king and queen and a popper on the road is looking for a person who knows digital. So from a client to an agency to to anybody, everybody is out there asking you what is the kind of digital experience. So you're not fighting in a saturated market, or you're not fighting in a market which has expertise for a long period of time. Good talent comes rarely. So you can charge a premium, but your output has to be seen on an immediate basis, right? Like they cannot wait for 1 year or 1.5 years for you to show the value of why you're charging that sort of a premium. And again, profitability cannot be looked at only from from retainerships. Today, the way that the competition is out there in the market, you may charge X. There are people out there who will do it at X by 10, and you can't have a competition conversation and yet have a profitability conversation. According to me, the profitability conversation has to be a widespread, right? Where you have a client, you establish a relationship with that client, and when you're establishing a relationship with that client, you can go wide in terms of the services you offer, and you can go deep in terms of the expertise that you have in that subject sort of a matter. And that's been our attempt, in most of what we've tried to do. So in some cases, premium is accepted, and those are great clients to have on your roster, and and it's out there. But in majority, it doesn't fly beyond a certain degree. Like clients are happy to pay you a 20% premium or 30% premium, but am I paying a 20%, 30% premium to all the agencies out there that I'm competing with in terms of salary? No. In some cases, I'm paying much more, right? And they're very greedy for time of your senior resources, right? Like today, you turn around and ask me how many clients I'm servicing. I don't even know. So so you have to manage that. You have to manage that balance, and which is why having width and having the depth really helps you manage. Like for me, then, so the way that we are structured is that the 7 businesses that we have internally have different P&Ls, but my profitability index is the client. My profitability index is not the individual P&L. So I look at the client individually and I say that what were the services that I was able to offer to this client, and how profitable was the client, to me. So in some cases, in some of the services, I can eat up my profit margin to keep the client there. But in some cases, I can charge a premium and manage the profitability at the end of the year. That's how we structure it.
Right. Upsell, cross-sell, have a separate P&L. But Anil, India is a very different market altogether, and we ask for discounts on discounted products.
Right.
This will be ever profitable rightly. That's the last question to you.
Well, Rahul, the thing is, we are people who love to bargain at every stage, because we feel there is a sense of victory or achievement when we even manage to get a rupee off somewhere. Yeah. So, but we also know that when it comes to serious products and services, things don't come cheap. Because for quality products, we can demand a premium, and if we are honest and we are right, we get it, because uh, sometimes we have to say no to a client because we can't compromise on our quality, so but when they realize that we are right, they definitely come back to us, because they know that there are certain things that you need to pay more for. So yeah, wherever discounts are, like, we can give discounts, we do, but otherwise we tell them that, but this will be the this is what it's going to cost. So, yeah.
Understood. Understood. So, Advait, how should agencies ensure that their profitable growth is not emptying their clients' pocket unnecessarily?
Rahul, we've been lucky enough. When we started off as typical agency operating in India, and I think around 2013 or 14, we realized that the space was getting pretty crowded. So we kind of strategically decided that, okay, we'll work with brands in India, but let's start looking at the overseas market. So that has paid us some fantastic dividends, because if you look at P&L and our numbers, say last year, this year, 65 to 70% of our revenue is from overseas, Middle East and Southeast Asia. Only 30% of our revenue is from clients in India. And we've also moved away from the agency model. Like, we don't do any retainers anymore. I think the last time we did a retainer was about 6-7 years ago. And so why I'm kind of stressing that or wanting to make that point is because one, if you can charge X to an Indian client, we've seen that you can charge anywhere between 2 to 3X to a client overseas. Two, it's always good to have your revenue coming in dollars, but then your expenses, you still keep it in rupees. So that really helps, have a very, very healthy profit margin. Three, what we've seen is the keenness to negotiate, or the aggressive nature of negotiating that Indian clients show. We haven't seen that in overseas clients. They're very, very happy to most of the times pay a good, handsome amount for the projects that we deliver. And over the last 5-6 years, we've built those relationships abroad, and that has really, really helped us. In fact, if you look at the last 10 years that we've been in business, obviously the last 3-4 months have been the most challenging. But even though they were challenging, every month we were profitable. We didn't cut any salaries, we didn't lay off any people, and we continued to operate quite well. Obviously, numbers were down, but then given that the margins that we were operating at, it was very, very healthy. So I think that is something that a lot of the agencies, especially service solution providers, should very seriously look at, because if you invest time, effort, money, and build relationships overseas, there is good business that you can kind of generate over there. So that is something I haven't seen a lot of large agencies do that. Maybe it's because when you're sometimes when you become a part of the group, and the 4 big groups, each group has their own agencies in different regions, and maybe you are not supposed to do cross country selling, but for the new types of services and solutions that that we're providing, there's huge potential. The other thing that we very consciously do is, again, in the last 6-7 years, is something that I basically tell my team, that let's not try to get into providing services and solutions where it's a race to the bottom. That basically means there's 10 other people bidding for the same thing. It's a race to the bottom. You just got to keep lowering your price to get that business. I mean, that's just I don't think it makes a lot of business sense for us, because if you keep reducing your prices, but then your other expenses and your outflows are same or keep increasing, then it's going to eat into your margins. So try not to get into businesses or offer solutions where it's kind of a race to the bottom, right? And finally, I think the speed at which things in advertising, marketing, and digital are changing, there's so many new and interesting opportunities that are there for businesses to explore, and that we very actively keep putting in some time and effort into R&D and try to get new stuff. And given that we have a huge kind of roster of agencies that we work with in overseas and brands as well, all these brands are willing to experiment and look at these new and interesting solutions that we offer. And the reason I'm talking about these new and interesting solutions is because you have less number of teams trying to do that. Therefore, you automatically can charge a premium and a higher price. And that again helps your top line and your bottom line. So I think these are a few things. I think if you want to drive profitability, if agencies or tech studios or creative teams want to drive profitability, I say one, very, very aggressively try to look for business overseas. Two, don't look at getting into offering services and solutions where it's a race to the bottom, where there's too many people trying to do the same thing. And three, definitely do a lot of R&D. Look at the new stuff that you can get into anywhere where you can even own some of the intellectual property. That kind of stuff is really, really helpful in the long run to drive both your top line and your bottom line growth.
Right. Thanks for summing up, Advait, and it really was insightful. Vimal, overall, it looks like increasing efficiency is the only good way agencies will move towards more profitable growth, apart from the points that Advait just pointed out. So, top of your mind, can you list 2-3 ways in which agencies can improve their efficiency?
Sure, Rahul. I think today, we all know we have a very limited number of hours in a day, right? And there's so much you can do in those number of hours. And efficiency is the only thing which you can always count upon and deliver better results to your clients. So the way we look at things to be more efficient in our agency is to look into how we can automate the regular tasks, the tasks that are repetitive in nature. How you can automate those tasks and templatize your entire model to deal with that. That's probably one. Second, I would suggest improve the communication management. How do you improve? So today we all know, most of the companies have work from home structure right now where employees and everybody is working from their own home. How do you improve your communication? How do you improve your collaboration with these teams and all, and still make the project profitable and improve the efficiency in the way you're managing those projects? So of course, looking into that is one of the things. And third, I would say your entire management skills about, whatever you're managing, whether it's an HR, your lead management or your business. If you can try and bring more efficiency, probably using certain tools or creating certain framework, I think that adds up a lot in making a business a little more profitable and efficient in nature.
Right, Vimal. So, Pranav, if given an option, would you go for redesigning workflows and systems for greater efficiency at your organization for higher profitability?
Well, I think the two are sort of linked in some way. Obviously, the focus needs to be on creating a lot of efficiencies at scale, which eventually allow you to run a fairly high yield and a lean business, which eventually translates into good operating margins, right? So I think obviously wherever we can create scalable processes, so the accounting teams on an everyday basis know exactly how to go about their tasks. If you're able to create replicable checklists, SOPs, and things like that, obviously we are efficiency is the beginning of where we lead to eventual profitability, right? So definitely a strong focus on that. But I also think it's really about at the end of the day also trying to build a great culture of collaboration and partnership, both internally and at the client level, so that there's value creation on both sides of that table, right? So I think being able to offer all of those things in a cumulative way will obviously set the path forward for having a really profitable operation. And and there are many things we can talk about, but I always maintain that really how do you keep your business development costs down? How do you keep your recruitment costs down? Client acquisition costs, other indirect costs. how do you manage all of those areas to really build a profitable business? So there's a lot that we can do there, certainly.
I'm sure there's a lot to do. But in India, generally, profitability is a founder's task. But in actuality, it should be everyone's responsibility. And Suman, how would you ensure that your employees contribute to profitability in the way that you want?
See, I think you take care of employees, they will take care of you. Okay, as far as employees are concerned. And profitability, I think, has more to do with your business approach. And yes, you need support of your team, definitely. And in my case, I would say, given the expectation of client, you can't make money if you will keep making good creative stuff and saying that this is very good creative. No, that won't work. You will have to impact the client business. If you impact the client numbers, you charge a premium, they will be happy to pay. But without having business impact, you won't be able to charge a premium, and it is not sustainable also. So if you can impact the client business, you charge and they will be happy to pay. There is no doubt about it.
So, and Ashutosh, influencer marketing is a very crowded space to be in. What have you done in the last year to give your company a profitable growth?
Rahul, to be very honest, so when we jumped into this bandwagon, right, typical, it was a crowded space even then also. So we were a very late entrant, right? And it's all about disruption, Rahul, at the end of the day, to be very honest, right? It's all about what do you have to tell the world, what is your story, right? And what do you have to give to a client, to be very honest, right? We being one of the last entrant, I think a late entrant for me is always latest. This is what I have always believed, right? We were late, we were latest. We only captured on one thing, which was creative. We said we will not do influencer marketing, which is non-creative in nature, which is absolutely of no use. We stopped sending those lists, those numbers, right? And trust me, I am one of those guys. Bazooka is known for one thing, is their creative interference, which is part A. And I'm a no-nonsense guy when it comes to, if I have quoted a cost, trust me on that, I'm not going to come down of it. There are only two reasons behind it. A, we're very confident about the kind of work which we do, which is A. And B is, whatever we are charging, yes, we do charge a premium, to be very honest, but that premium comes with a lot of effort which we as a team put in, right? So Rahul, I think there is no cost to anything, right? It's always about what do you have in your plate to serve to a client. See, clients are looking for reasons to pay you, to be very, very honest. And also there could be one more reason. See, I only work with A-lister clients, to be very, very honest, right? When I work with A-lister clients, right, they have a very different level of expectation. For them, creativity is something which is very, very important. For them, something which is a planning thing is very, very important, right? See, you can't serve samosas at the end of the day and start making it look like a burger. At the end, this is what I believe, right? You have to make that burger look like a burger, and then you have to add those sauces. Then you have to add those different level of cream, different level of things, right? That's how you make a great product at the end of the day. And I am again telling a lot of entrepreneurs who've been listening to me, trust me, clients are ready to pay you a premium. Give them something which they are looking for. And trust me, this is something like do it every day, repeat. That's how I have lived for the last 3 years, 2.5, 3 years as Bazooka has lived here. And I'm sure in the next 7-10 years, till I am here in this business, it's going to be like this only.
Understood, Ashutosh. And really insightful. Thank you, everyone. It was really wonderful chatting up with you guys. And I'm really sure people have a lot of insights to take home from this webinar. Really thankful to all of you. See you next time. Bye-bye.